1932 removal of the bonus army is not a high point of General MacArthur's career. A few years ago, we had a visitor stop by, and he said that if he could go back in time, he would have advised MacArthur to avoid the situation entirely. Now, the truth is MacArthur did receive that advice at the time. So why didn't he take it, and why did someone so devoted to his fellow World War I veterans choose to play such a public role in this controversial event? Given the consequences of the event, it's easy to find fault with MacArthur. As historians, though, we are not just interested in consequences. We are also interested in how events unfold and what motivates people to make the decisions and take the actions that they take. So today, join us behind the scenes in the MacArthur Archives as we examine the bonus march and MacArthur's involvement in this event.
In November of 1930, Douglas MacArthur was selected to be Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army by President Hoover. And MacArthur came into the office. It was a time of the Depression. It was a time when forces of pacifism, isolationism were running throughout the country, and Douglas MacArthur's main job was trying to keep the Army whole. Congress was trying to slash the budget and trying to get at, the amount of officers and the amount of the fixed army that he had, and he was trying to keep that whole. And so that's where he is in 1932 when the bonus expeditionary force marches on Washington, and MacArthur then is called to expunge the bonus army from downtown Washington. Now, what happened is after World War I, the veterans wanted to get some kind of bonus, and there was a lot of people lobbying for this as well. There were many different kinds of bills, but come around 1924, they finally get a bill that says if you were serving in the United States, you get $1 a day. If you were serving overseas, you got $1.25 a day, and they're going to pay it in 1945. So it comes out to be about $1,000 that you'll get in 45, or if you die early. So it's kind of like this adjusted compensation. It's kind of like a life insurance thing, and they'll call it the World War I Veterans Act. Now, then the Depression hits, and in late 1920s, this congressman from Texas named Wright Patman starts advocating for paying off the bonus immediately. And as the Depression builds, this becomes very eagerly sought by a lot of the veterans. And in December of 1931, Wright Patman goes to Congress and demanded that the full payment of the bonus be made then, in 1931, coming into 1932. And this is really what sets off the bonus march, because all these veterans around the country, they don't have jobs. They hear about Congress is about to pass this bill, and one of the people, a guy named Walter Waters, he's in Portland, Oregon, says, well, we ought to just get on a train and go to Washington and help lobby this thing. So it's kind of this word of mouth thing that all these people are going to start coming to Washington, all these veterans, to lobby for this bonus bill that they want to get paid immediately. The thing is, this is about March 1932. There has been a lot of unrest in the country, and just in that month as well, there had been a great strike at the Ford plant in Detroit, and the police fired on everybody and killed a bunch of guys. And so then when they had the funeral, all the marchers broke out the red flags, the pictures of Stalin, the pictures of Lenin. And so this kind of ignites everybody in Washington. It's like, boy, is this what's coming to Washington? And among them is Douglas MacArthur and other people within the Army who now are watching this. Now, as well as all the veterans coming, it is just a mass movement coming across, and most of the governors don't want them hanging out in their states, so they get the National Guard to push them through trucks and get them on to Washington. And so you got about 17,000 people that are going to come to Washington and coagulate there. And you've also got the U.S. Communist Party under this guy, John T. Pace. He's in touch with the Comintern, and they've told him, get as many followers as you can, take them to Washington, don't overlook any opportunity to cause disruption. He's got maybe 200 people. And the thing is all the bonus marchers, the veterans, they're all very peaceful during the June 1932 time frame when they start really coming into Washington, and they aren't going to mix with these communists at all. And there's a couple of hundred of them, and they are coming as well. Now, in Washington, you've got some people in the Army, they want to resurrect this War Plan White, which is a defense of the Capitol against insurrectionists. And one of the main guys proposing it is this guy, George Van Horn Mosley. And He goes to MacArthur in late May and says, we should start getting ready for these people coming. We got this war plan white. MacArthur doesn't really want to go there, but after a couple of weeks, he's like, yeah, maybe this is right. Let's start practicing, or let's get ready for the worst case scenario. On June 8th, MacArthur went to Pittsburgh and gave a very speech that was known throughout the country. It was this: pacifism is the bedfellow of communism. If you let radicalism flourish in America, the republic will be turned to dust and ashes. So he has some very definite ideas about the situation in the country. And when he's in Pittsburgh, that's when this guy John T. Pace and his communists are coming through Pittsburgh. There's a big street fight there. MacArthur sees that. So when he comes back to Washington right after that, he gets the 9 Corps commanders throughout the country to start investigating. Are communists coming to Washington? And they pretty much go through and say, no, you've got very limited communist element. These are veterans. These are guys that are down on their luck. They have no way to substantiate themselves, no jobs, and they see them as pretty much the rest of the country sees them, just out-of-work veterans coming there. MacArthur, Van Horn, Mosley, though, they're still worried about this element and what's going to happen there in Washington. Now, as the bonus marchers start coming to Washington, there's the police chief of Washington. His name's Pelham Glassford. And Glassford was a former brigadier general. He had come to visit Washington in September of 31 and met with the D.C. commissioners. See, there's no mayor. Congress picks commissioners that run downtown. And one of them was this guy named Hugh Crosby. He used to be a major general. He knows Glassford and asks him to take over the Metropolitan Police Force. And Glassford does that. Now, in December of 31, you had this communist hunger march that came to Washington, about 3,000 people. Glassford got them all set up, had funds donated to be able to take care of them. It kind of made the commissioners mad in Washington, but Glassford was saying, well, you can have this peaceful way to do it, or you can have them all riot. In January of 32, then you had Father Cox come with about 6,000 people, again, another hunger march, and just trying to let people be aware of what's going on. And Glassford took care of them as well. Now he's got all these bonus marchers coming, and Glassford knows he's going to have thousands. Now he starts putting in all of his own money. He starts collecting money from different establishments around D.C. to house all these people. He sets up a camp at this place called Camp Glassford. It's about just northwest of the capital in Washington, and then he sets up an area south of the Anacostia River. In Anacostia, they'll call that Camp Marks, after the 11th Precinct commander, this guy Sidney Marks. So now you've got veterans pouring into the city, and they're going to be lobbying. Walter Waters, he's a very charismatic guy, the guy who came from Portland. He's a good speaker, and he's pretty much seen as the leader of this bonus force. Now, through June, they're trying to get this bill through, but June 17th, the bill gets shelved by the Senate, and it's not going to get passed. And now everybody in Washington is like, okay, this thing is not going to pass, and then come into July, 16 of July, the Congress adjourns and they leave town. Now you've got everybody in Washington saying, what's going on? Are these people going to stay here? And a lot of the bonus marchers, they have nowhere to go, so they're planning on staying there. And this starts getting into the realms of government. What are we going to do about this? Because not only that, but on July 20th, the Secretary of Treasury and the Treasury Department, which owned that area at Camp Glassford where the veterans were staying, they want to kick them all out because there's a contract to knock down all those buildings and build a new area. That's where like the National Portrait Gallery is today. As well, July 20th, Pace and his guys do this staged attack on the White House. They have a street battle with the cops on July 21st. Again, they try to go again at the White House, and there's a big fight between them at the Treasury building, a big riot in the streets. And so MacArthur and Van Horn Mosley are now seeing these happening downtown. They've had tanks brought in from Fort Meade, about 6 of old Renault tanks brought in Fort Myer across the Potomac River in Arlington area. They've got the 12th Infantry down at Fort Washington, which is just down the Potomac River in Maryland. And they start getting them geared up on riot train. Brigadier General Perry Miles, he is the commander of that area, and he starts getting them geared up for if they have to go into Washington. And Perry Miles is a big believer in using tear gas, and that is what his full force is going to be about, is tear gassing if they get called down there. Now, July 26th, Walter Waters is brought in with the Secretary of War, Hurley, and MacArthur is there, and Hurley basically tells him, you have to get out. We are going to close this thing down. You're going to have to leave all these government buildings, and you're going to have to get out of the city. And they said MacArthur was there the whole time, just pacing and not saying anything. And finally, Waters asked MacArthur, if we have to leave, are we going to get word? Are you going to let us get out? And MacArthur was like, of course, my friend. We'll let you get out. July 28th, the police show up down at that Camp Glassford area right northwest of the Capitol, and they go in to move them out. There's a bunch of veterans in there that won't move at all. They have to get carried out. But then at about 11 o'clock, this guy Bernard McCoy, and he's a radical, and the thing is when everybody heard about the police moving them out of that area downtown, they started flooding the area from Camp Mark, south of the Anacostia, and these other camps around town. And McCoy shows up. He's got an American flag. Basically, a riot starts right there. There's a lot of rock throwing. There's a lot of brick throwing going on. Pelham Glassford gets knocked down and by McCoy, because McCoy grabs his badge off of his shirt, and another policeman comes to his aid, and then he gets hit in the head with a brick and gets a fractured skull. And Glassford stands up. Brickbat hits him in the chest. He's like, stop all this madness. Stop it all right now. He gets it all cleared up. The thing is, there is a spy there named Keck who works for the Attorney General and the commissioners of downtown, and he goes and reports that they've had this riot there. And Glassford at lunchtime goes and meets with the commissioners, and he says, I don't think we should try and evict anybody else the rest of the day because tempers are so hot. And the commissioners say, well, what, you don't have control of it? He said, no, I'm just saying, if you want to evict anybody else, you're probably going to have to call the Army. Now, Glassford thinks he's still got control of it, but the commissioners take that as the Army's going to have to come in. They contact Douglas MacArthur. MacArthur calls Perry Miles over at Fort Myer, says, get everybody ready because this thing's probably going to go down. And then you've got him announcing to the 3rd Battalion, 12th Infantry at Fort Washington, and to that 3rd Cavalry, the 2nd Squadron there at Myer, that they're going to move in to downtown. Now, about 1:45, Glassford is back at that Camp Glassford area where they tried to move him earlier in the day, and he and a policeman, George Chenault, and another policeman named Zmanacek, they hear this scuffle going on inside one of those dilapidated buildings in that Camp Glassford area. They go in there, they get knocked down by 2 of the bonus marchers. This one guy, Hashka, grabbed George Chenault's nightstick and hit him with it. Chenault pulled his pistol and shot this guy Hashka, as well as this other bonus marcher named Carson. Once again, Glassford gets up, tries to get calm, holds the situation off, and about 2 o'clock, he hears that troops are amassing down at the Ellipsis in Washington. And he goes down there about 2:30, and sure enough, the 3rd Cavalry has already crossed the Memorial Bridge, and they are at the Ellipsis, which is right south of the White House. Now, at 2:55, MacArthur gets the message from Secretary of War Hurley. And Hurley tells MacArthur, the commissioners don't think they can keep control downtown. We are asking for the Army to come in. You are to go down there. You are to cooperate with the police. You're to work with them to clear these marchers out of these government areas. MacArthur immediately calls his aide, go to my house, get my best uniform. As well, he tells his military secretary, a young Dwight D. Eisenhower, go put on your uniform. We're going to go down there. Now, Eisenhower tells MacArthur, I don't think you should do this. Let a colonel handle this. There is no reason for you to go down there at all. MacArthur believes this is a test of the federal government, and he has to go because he's going to take the blame. He's going to take the rap for this. Come about 3:30, MacArthur is down at the Ellipsis as well, and Pelham Glassford, the police chief, shows up and talks to him and says, what's going on? MacArthur says, we're going to break the back of the BEF, the Bonus Expeditionary Force. Perry Miles is there. He's surprised to see MacArthur as well. MacArthur says, I'm not here to give orders. I'm just here to, check on progress and be here in case things need to be decided quickly. And as well, I'm going to take the rap. And Miles said, yeah, I never got any grief about this at all because it all went on MacArthur. And pretty much all these guys are going to say that. 4:30, the 12th Infantry shows up, 3rd Battalion. They had to take a boat from Fort Washington. That's why it took them so long to get there. And about 4:30, they move out down Pennsylvania Avenue with the tanks, the squadron of cavalry, and then as well this battalion of troops. They get to that Camp Glassford area about 5:30. They start moving through. MacArthur is there. All these people have said over the years that he rode down on a white Charger. It was a bunch of garbage. He was there in his staff car, and he did not look happy at all. He said it was the most distasteful thing he had ever done in his career. Miles said the same. Patton, all of them, because Patton is there. George Patton's there with the 3rd Cavalry. The cavalry will hold the crowd back because there's about 10,000 spectators there now, and they're using the flats of their swords to keep everybody back. They're throwing gas at them as well. 12th Infantry goes in, clears out Camp Glassford, uses nothing but gas. They said they fired the camps, but the Dixon and Allen, in their latest book about the bonus march, one of the last that came out, said that they had these tear gas canisters that emitted sparks, and that was mostly what they thought caused all these fires at the camps. After they clear out Glassford, they move down to 13th Street, and they clear out John T. Pace's communist camp. They drive them all south. They drive them south across the 11th Street drawbridge. It's the only bridge in Anacostia, and there at 8:30, the troops stop, and MacArthur's there with them again, and the tanks are right there on the bridge as well. Nobody has been killed. The troops have not fired on anyone. They've cleared out everybody. There's been minor scrapes. There's been a lot of bricks thrown, a lot of rocks thrown. Some guys get pricked with the end of a sword. Some guys get a bayonet, in the butt if they're not moving too fast. But finally, at about 8:30, they're there at the 11th Street drawbridge, and this guy Atwell from the camp comes out to speak with MacArthur. See, because Walter Waters is gone. They can't find him anywhere, and that's why MacArthur would always say, at this point, all the leaders had vacated, and it was just a mob, and that's what he'll always say. But Atwell comes, MacArthur says, sure, my boy, I'll give you another hour to get out of there. But this is where the whole problem of MacArthur disobeyed orders and everything else comes in, because George Van Horn Moseley, the chief of staff, said that he went down there and gave MacArthur orders from Hoover not to cross the Anacostia Bridge. And he said as well that he sent a Colonel Wright later to again give MacArthur the orders not to cross the bridge. So everybody says MacArthur just violated his orders, went in, burned out the camps. But you have 3 witnesses. You've got Dwight D. Eisenhower, you've got Perry Miles, and then you've got Assistant Secretary of the Air, Truby Davison, that said MacArthur never got those orders. MacArthur said that when Van Horn Moseley came down there and when Wright came down there, MacArthur was basically saying, I'm not going to listen to anybody bringing me orders. Now this operation is in the move. We're all ready to cross the bridge. And so Eisenhower said definitely he never heard him just because he wouldn't listen to those people. Then you've got Perry Miles, the brigadier general there, says MacArthur never got the orders. He never got them because he wouldn't get them. But then you've got Truby Davison, who the next day was in the office of George Van Horn Moseley, and Moseley's in there with the Assistant Secretary of War, Frederick Payne, and they're laughing to each other because they said they held up the orders going to MacArthur not to cross the bridge. So you've got 3 witnesses that saying MacArthur never got these orders not to cross the bridge. They cross the bridge, they go in there. Eisenhower said they got about 100 yards from the camp and it went up in flames. He said that the soldiers did not do it. Now Dixon and Allen say, again, it's because of these canisters. But the camps are burned out completely. Everybody's gone. Everybody leaves. The troops are going to go back to their billets, and MacArthur is going back to the War Department. And Eisenhower finds out he's going to have a press conference. And this is really what causes a lot of the flack, because MacArthur goes out there, says they were all insurrectionists. It was a mob looking for revolution. I don't believe that, 1 out of every 10 people there was even a veteran. He'll hold on to this for the rest of his life. He doesn't call them communists at that point. He calls them insurrectionists. Later on in '64, when he writes his book Reminiscences, he'll call them a bunch of communists. But Hoover knows how horrible this is. And he upbraids MacArthur because of this. MacArthur doesn't apologize because he believed he was given the orders to go in and clear them out. But he says he'll resign. And Hoover said, no, that's not going to happen. Hoover knows it's the end. FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he knows it's the end. Because in every newspaper the next day, you're showing tear gas being thrown at people. You're showing troops with bayonets. You're showing horses. You're showing tanks going down the street. And then as well, you're showing big images of this camp of all these former veterans, just ragtag veterans being forced out of the city. And so MacArthur will be blamed for it for the rest of his life. Now Glassford, Perry Miles, all the people that were there said that the only reason that it was done without the loss of life was because of MacArthur. You've got him being called the General Goober of Anacostia. Hoover will lose the election because of this, and MacArthur will be the target of every communist and everybody else for the rest of his life. In 1951, when he came back to the United States, people said, wow, you're the big hero. And he's like, well, I'm not going to let it go to my head, because in 1932, you couldn't have sold my name for a dime on the dollar. Walter Waters evaporated. A year later, he comes back and sees MacArthur in his office, and MacArthur gets him a job as a clerk in downtown. Pretty much the way it rolled out. As you can see, we have all the materials here that can help people work on it. All the books that have been written, like I said, pretty much all of them say something different, but that's basically the gist of it.